Welcome in, everybody, and happy Memorial Day. Hope it's been a good one for you. It is time, as it is every week, for Ask Mike, as Mike Irwin joins me. And I got a stack of 12 questions in front of me that we get to get through today. And
they're good questions, too.
They're good questions.
Good
okay,
ones.
That's good to hear. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first question comes from Hob Hog, who asks, can the average football program afford to play football games with no fans in the stands? I'm a season ticket holder, and I'm not sure it's wise to refund my money and expect me to reapply after encouraging me to sit at home watching on TV for a year. And I can't imagine too many schools without big TV money would survive that. Maybe if we say a prayer again before kickoff, we could consider it a church service and allow attendance.
Okay, funny little remark thrown in there at the end, but he does have a really good point, which is if you think about it and you're running an athletic department and even part of a university, and you think about you tell fans to stay home and watch on TV for a year, what if they just say, hey, I like that? Then what happens the next year when you say, okay, it's all right to come back? You may lose fans. So that's just one of the reasons why I think there will be fans in the stands. I don't know if it's going to be a full capacity thing. We still have 3 months for that to be worked out. But again, you don't want people to get used to the idea that they don't really have to come to the games. And then also, if you have games, here's what I think will happen if you have games announced without fans. I still remember being a student. And if you don't think students pick a school based on going to games, would you like to go to Florida State with no games?
I'm going to tell you what, I decided to go to a big Division I school because I wanted that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, you want to go to those games. So if you know in advance there's not going to be a game and you're down in Little Rock or Central Arkansas, why wouldn't you just stay there and go to Arkansas Little Rock or some school closer to home and just say, I'm not going to Arkansas because I'm not going to go up there and not have any campus atmosphere. So all of those things, and then it's the damage to your community, because here in Fayetteville, there are all kinds of restaurants, hotels, vendors that make money off of Razorback athletics. I've got a good friend that says he will not survive, his business will not survive no football season without fans coming in here. He's already been hit hard with the baseball thing. So now what does that do? You're the university. You've ticked off all your local business people. You're going to come back to them at some point later on and say, oh, we need your help with this. They're going to be on, you didn't help us. So there's just a lot of reasons why I think there's pressure all over this country, not just here, on universities to go ahead and play games and play them with fans. I don't think they will do it if it's unsafe and they believe it's unsafe, but we got 3 months to figure that out.
And there are definitely ways, as you mentioned, to where you can get people inside and space them out.
Sure.
All right, Mirrid Hog wants to know, Mike, in the event that college football is held without fans in attendance this year, how do you think universities will handle those that have already donated money and paid for their season tickets? Have you heard any talk of how they'll handle this? Surely this has been a topic of conversation at higher levels, even if you hadn't heard anything about it.
Yeah, I haven't, and I'm sure it has been a topic. And think about it. Schools have already been hurt by this. I'll tell you where they've been hurt. They've already had to send students home and do this online thing, and that reduces what you're paying, and then they have all this revenue from dorms that just went away. That's not a small amount of money. Those dorms are mostly paid for. If they're not, they're being paid for by revenues from people being in those dorms. So you sent them all home, and you've lost that revenue all through the spring and into the summer. Now you're going to turn around and go, oh, here's some money back. We didn't have fans, so here's your money back. If I'm a university right now, I don't want to turn back any money I already have. So that's another reason why I think they will have fans in the stands.
All right, Hang 10 Hog says, here's an off-the-wall question for you. When Chad Morris was hired and knowing the qualifications, or lack thereof in parentheses, do you think Frank Broyles would have thought of him when ticking off the candidates to hire? I suspect that Frank would not have even had him in his top 5. If you were channeling Frank, do you think he would have hired Chad Morris?
I think I can channel Frank pretty good because I was around him for about, I don't know, 30 years or so. No, he would not have, because Chad Morris at that point would not have had the kind of resume that Frank looks for. He hadn't had enough years as a head coach, and he certainly hadn't had enough success. I think he would have zeroed in very quickly on Mike Norvell, who had these Arkansas ties. That would have been a plus. Plus, he was close by in Memphis, and he had a proven track record. So I think he would have been a major candidate. And I think he would have looked at Mike Leach, because Mike Leach was a proven guy and had rebuilt programs that were down, and he really wanted the job a lot more so then than he did the second time after Chad Morris was fired. So I think one of those two guys would have ended up with the job, and I don't think Chad Morris would have even gotten an interview.
Yeah, Mike Norvell's somewhere else now. Seats on the 50 says, I've been a Hog fan since the 60s and watched the Lanny Van Em running Lanny Van Eman running Razorbacks with Dean Tolson and Martin Terry and Barnhill. This is my first post on any board ever. Thank you. All I hear is how detailed Musselman is, but if you watch last year's games, there were very few times that we ever blocked out the opponent's free throw shooting. This is fundamental rule in coaching. One other thing is Musselman's reluctance to call timeouts early in the game when the opponent goes on a big run. Mike Anderson had the same problem. I thought that there were at least 2 losses that may have been different outcomes had timeouts been called earlier.
Okay, I want to thank him first for this first post, and
Absolutely.
I would encourage him to continue to do that. Even though I don't think a lot of fans will agree with what he said, I think some will. And Musselman did a thing, if you'll recall, where he pretended to be a fan, and he bought a ticket, and then he goes and he's in the empty arena, and he's put this on the internet, and he's sitting behind the coaching bench where the players and the coaches are, and he's yelling out all these things that he must have heard at some time during the season, because he's pretending to be those fans yelling all that stuff like, when's he going to call a timeout? Why doesn't he want to call timeout? Oh, he's playing zone defense. We got to play a zone defense. This man is not working. You got to play a zone defense. So he's aware of the fact that fans don't agree with everything he does, and he even had fun with it. Here's what I would say about him. He's not a conventional college coach, and I think Arkansas fans are really familiar with college coaches and what they do fundamentally. What you find Musselman doing a lot comes from the NBA. Now, I will defend that by saying, guess what that does? When the word gets out that that's what you do, what happens? It affects recruiting. And what did he just have? A top 6 recruiting class. I cannot tell you the last time Arkansas had a recruiting class ranked in the top 6 nationally. And I think this thing is working, where these AAU guys, and let's face it, the AAU guys are the ones that Kentucky always uses to do what they do. These AAU guys are attracted to Arkansas because of Musselman's ties to the NBA, and he's doing more what NBA coaches do. So you may look at that and say, that doesn't make any sense. That's not what Eddie Sutton would do. That's what Nolan didn't do those things, all these other coaches. He's his own guy, and we'll have to wait and see how successful he is, but I don't think a lot of fans are really worried about that right now, because they love the fact that he has fun with basketball and he's signing really good players.
And sometimes when you look at maybe the difference in these outcomes, not necessarily about a timeout played, but about the talent that Musselman was working with.
I mean, he won 19 games with a team that had like 7 guys that he could really count on, and then one of them, key player, Isaiah Joe, got hurt and was out for 5 or 6 games during the key part of the SEC race.
Yep. All right. Alabama Hog says, was the poor APR performance in Chad's first year the result of transfers and dismissals during the transition, or lack of attention and stressing and monitoring academic discipline by his staff?
You know, honestly, I can't answer a question like that, because, as you know, the academic records of athletes, it's not just not available to us, it's against the law for us to even talk about it, get a hold of it and talk about it. So I can't tell you for sure what happened academically under Chad Morris. But what I can say is this always falls under what I would call the buck stops here rule. It happened while he was the head coach. For whatever reason that it happened, it happened. And it was just another reason. Think about it. Those are the 2 worst years together in the entire 100 and whatever year history of Razorback basketball. They've never been that bad for 2 straight years. And this was just another example of nothing worked. Even the academics didn't work. So whatever caused it, he still was the head coach, and it's his fault.
Yeah, you know, that was one thing Bielema stressed, was academics, and he got on his guys hard about some of those things. Hog fan in Texas wants to know, has Dave Van Horn had any comments on the new proposal that extends the preseason practice to 9 weeks and delays the season until mid-March? There are other parts of the proposal that could increase revenue and cut expenses. Would these changes benefit Arkansas?
We haven't talked to Dave Van Horn. I'm hoping for us to do that because I'm very interested in what he has to say about that. But it's a great proposal. It was really done by some big name major college baseball coaches. It was done by people that know the game and have
Head coach
have
of
an interest
Michigan,
in it.
head coach of Vanderbilt, Louisville.
I think what they're concerned about is they've seen as a result of this COVID shutdown, we've seen programs canceled. Baseball programs at some of these smaller schools have issues. And even some of the Power 5 schools, if you get up north, they don't draw fans like they do down here. And we get used to that. We get used to seeing those big crowds at all these SEC schools. And you don't realize that sometimes if you get up to a place like Indiana, you may not have 500 people even in a big game later in the year. So the idea is we're going to take baseball, which is basically a spring-summer sport anyway, and we're going to make it a spring-summer sport because we're going to eliminate games mostly in March and all through February, and in February where they're played. We're going to eliminate those cold weather games, and we're going to replace them with games in June and July. That brings in more fans, more revenue, makes it a more popular sport. And at Arkansas, what it will do is this. We've got all these midweek games in the non-conference period when they're trying to get ready for SEC play, so they're playing as many games as possible. But it's so early in the year, they have to play these midweek games in the afternoon because it's too cold at night. Sometimes it's too cold during the day, but it's definitely too cold at night. So what happens? Fans can't go to those games if they're working. Well, what this would do is you would be able to play most of those games at night, which then frees up fans to come out and watch, and it's warmer. So I think it would, Arkansas already draws well. I think this would set attendance records if they do this. And look, I expect it to happen. But I'm wondering if it doesn't, somebody's lost their mind if they outvote these guys.
I'm going to tell you this, and you talked about this and voiced your opinion last Thursday, and to kind of take a quick pause, I love this proposal. And when this news came out that this idea was circulating around, I was listening to Phil Elson, who's the voice of the Razorbacks, on the radio on Thursday, and he made such great points where he broke it down. He said, the revenue from February games to March games goes up 11%. And from March to April, it goes up 16%. And so all you're doing, if you're Arkansas, is starting at that 11% increase in revenue and continuing on up if you eliminate those February games. And as this guy answered, would this affect Arkansas? Yes, but only in a good way. And if you're Arkansas, you don't hate this. It only helps you, but it really helps those northern schools. You're looking at Michigans and stuff that won't have to travel as much because it's a little bit warmer in mid-March than it is in mid-February.
Let me just say one more thing. I don't know if you've ever seen those sliding glass doors behind the concourse around home plate, behind home plate.
Yeah.
Do you know why those are there? Because when they first built Baum, they weren't there. And in these early games, the wind would come blowing through there, and those people in those high dollar seats right behind home plate were freezing to death. So they'd get up and move. And then they'd move back when it got warmer. So they shut those doors to make it warmer. Well, if you do this, you won't have to do that. You'll open those doors because you want that breeze coming through in those areas. And I've been to baseball games. I used to go to Texas Rangers games when I was in college. And you would go to those games at Old Arlington Stadium, and it was breezy out there, the way that stadium was constructed. It was so nice to be out there at night, have the wind blow. And that's one of the reasons that, by the way, that they got rid of the current stadium that they have, is because it's all enclosed and it's too hot in Dallas, and people were roasting there. So now they've got it where they put a roof on this thing. If it's too hot, they put air conditioners on. But I think there's no substitute for watching a baseball game in the summer with a nice breeze and the stars out and all that. It's a summer sport.
Absolutely, I agree. All right, Swine American says, presuming the entire football season is going to be played, if you were Hunter Yurachek, what objectives would you set for Sam Pittman to achieve in order to conclude that his first year as our coach was satisfactory, if not a success?
Well, I don't think that he's going to set specific win totals. I think what he's more going to be looking at is, does the defense show fight the whole year? And in certain parts of the game, when you get behind, does the defense collapse? Do you have these big, huge gouge plays? Or do they at least make you, when you go down and score on the defense, they make you earn it?
What about, are you beating your non-conference opponents?
That would matter too. That would matter too. Are you giving up 60-yard runs to guys from places like San Jose State?
Right.
You know.
Right.
And then I think on the offensive side, it's just so obvious. You're going to look at, okay, do they name a starting quarterback pretty quickly, and do they stick with that guy? Or are they having to put other guys in there because that guy's not getting the job done? Does it look like the players understand the offense? Is the offensive line getting better? Do you have fewer sacks and quarterbacks running for their lives?
Yeah.
So it may not be specific win totals, but I think it's just there are all these problems we've seen over the last 2 years that it would be pretty easy to evaluate. And by the way, that's what we'll do. You and I both will do this. All of us here will. We will be looking at, hey, are they doing this still? Is this still going on? Or have we gotten past that?
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Holman 24 wants to know how many will make it to volunteer practice with no school and COVID. Just your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think what he's confused there about is the voluntary part. They keep talking about these voluntary practices, so people think that's being specifically put in there to give players an option of not coming. Well, it is. I mean, absolutely.
It's always been voluntary.
But this has always been around. In fact, if you go back far enough, nobody was around in the summer unless they lived around here. And you could come up and use the facilities if you lived in the area. But then all of a sudden, some players started hanging around campus and they'd get them jobs. And I remember in the Matt Jones days, Matt Jones would be out there with a bunch of those guys and they'd be running plays, and they had a player out there that was kind of, you could tell he wasn't a starter, but he'd probably been told by the coaches, hey, run these plays, do this or whatever, because it looked like that guy was kind of running the show. So they extended it to that, and then they finally got around to saying, okay, yeah, you can really have strength and conditioning coaches. So they officially allowed coaches to be involved, but only the strength and conditioning people. Well, it was still called summer voluntary workouts, but there was nothing voluntary about it. If you wanted to play, you showed up.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you know, if you're going to play football, you don't sit at home and go, nah, I'm not going to do that. I mean, you want to play. You want to be up here in the summer. So then it got to the point where they said, okay, we're going to allow coaches out there, but they can only do it 5 times in June or July, and they can't have a football with them. So that's where we're at now. So all of this is to say that the voluntary thing does matter. I'm sure if a player said, I'm scared and I don't want to come, they probably wouldn't hold it against him. But I expect all of them to show up.
I think the real question here is a lot of these upperclassmen have places to live. They don't live in dorms anymore. The real question is, are the guys who enrolled early and the freshmen incoming who are supposed to be living in dorms, will they have somewhere to live?
And I got to believe they'll make arrangements. You're not going to penalize those guys. They haven't addressed that issue specifically, but I got to believe they will figure out a place to put these. And then there's this other thing where originally the SEC didn't say anything about other sports, and then the NCAA comes back and says other sports. So now I'm thinking, what about baseball? Because they were severely impacted, and Dave Van Horn talked about that over 2 months ago, about how this had to be made up somehow. So I'm now wondering, if baseball players are allowed, when do they come in? And I think they come in at the same time. And then what do you do with them? Initially, they're going to have to just do the weight thing too. But say in July, if the football teams start working out, I'm not so sure you're not going to see some kind of baseball games over there, which would be interesting.
Some scrimmages at least. Okay. Bacon the Saddle again says, when the MLB only begins with the MLB draft only being 5 rounds, how likely is it that Casey Opitz returns on the Razorback roster next year? If he returns, what does it mean for the 2 graduate transfer catchers we took on this month?
Well, if you read Casey's tweet today, what was that award he got?
He got the SEC All-Academic Award, and he retweeted it saying, I want to thank everyone who helped me get here, and I will always consider myself a Razorback.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much indicating he's gone.
And I don't think Dave Van Horn brings in 2 grad transfer catchers on top of the freshmen that they had this year.
But just in case that happens, let me just say, the one of them, A.J. Lewis, is an all-around athlete who throughout his career playing baseball all the way back to Little League has played virtually every position on the field. And by all accounts, he's very athletic, could play virtually anywhere. And what's the other guy's name? Robert Emery. Robert Emery has played. He mentioned that he can play first base or left field. So if something happened and this changed, they'd find a place for him because both of them are almost 400 hitters. I mean, they're way up there, upper level. These guys can hit the baseball.
You find a spot for him in the lineup. All right, Pig's Feet. Pig's Feet. Will the decision to have fans at ball games be up to the individual or the university? Is the real fear that someone will sue the university if they get sick after attending a game?
You know, that's a liability thing, and to me, it's kind of a double thing. The universities will be liable to do proper safety rules. In other words, whatever the common thing is throughout football, you know, whether it's properly distance these people in standing in line, whether it's disinfecting whatever they do in the concession stands, how they have people there, how they spread people out in the stadium, all that stuff. You have to, I think, you'd have to be very aware that you could be sued if you didn't follow these policies. But if you do follow those policies, then I think it's on the individual person coming to the game to decide, you know, I'm willing to take a little bit of a risk because there's no guarantees. Would somebody, if they came down with COVID-19 and got really sick, would they be able to sue the university? It's possible, but I think what would happen is the only way you would be successful in that is if your attorney could prove that that school where you went to their game was negligent and didn't do all the things they were supposed to do.
You know, our media credentials for the SEC have very certain stipulations on it, and by accepting this media pass, you accept these things. They might do that with tickets. Say, if you accept this ticket, you buy it, you come, you're accepting responsibility.
You might like fall out of the upper deck and die or something. So
let's hope not that.
I believe there's got to be something on these tickets where you absolve the university of liability in really strange cases where things happen.
Yep. All right. Can you explain the importance of what Coach Sutton meant to Razorback basketball?
Oh.
Briefly.
Here's what he did. And some people have said, well, what he did was he invented basketball. It's not that so much. The importance was this. He came in at a time when the NCAA basketball tournament was starting to be a big deal on TV. And by doing that, that got fans so excited that Arkansas was a part of that March Madness thing that it helped sell tickets during the regular season because everybody wanted to see, hey, are we going to make it? Got to win this game tonight. That'll keep, that'll keep us on track. Maybe we can get in by winning the SEC or the SEC or SWC or SWC tournament. So he basically put butts in the seats. There had been good basketball here before, especially in earlier 30s, 40s, or whatever. But he put butts in the seats, and then what happened was with the revenue, from the extra revenue from in those days, you got more money. They didn't do it evenly like they do now. In those days, if you made the NCAA basketball tournament, you got a lot of extra revenue for how far you went. So you take that money, you take the money from season ticket sales, and guess what Frank Broyles did? He improved a lot of facilities.
Absolutely. Okay. Last question. Do you have any cool stories?
Yeah, I do. And it's one that I've told partially, but I've never told it to this extent.
Okay.
Because I have to admit something that it won't get me in trouble now, but it could be embarrassing. I don't know. Okay, I've told a story about Eddie asking me to mic him up because they lost this game to Rice, and he was mad, and he wanted to show people what he would do to correct this problem. And so I put this mic on him. I've got the headsets, I've got the camera, and he's going crazy for about 30 minutes, yelling at them and stopping and chewing guys out and showing all the mistakes they made. So after about 30 minutes, he stops and he leaves and puts his assistants in charge of practice, and he goes up toward his office. Well, I'm thinking, I got these headsets on, and I'm thinking, oh, well, he's probably going to the restroom. I don't want to be wearing these headsets when he does that, so I take them off. But then he doesn't come back. And after a while, I'm going, well, what is this all about? What is he doing? So I put the headsets on just to try and see if I can figure out what he's doing. Ooh, he's on the phone in his office with Bobby Knight, and they are mad. They are both, I can't hear everything Bobby Knight's saying, but I can hear Coach Sutton, and they're talking about the fact that fans are trying to change the game by making everything more about offense and not about defense. And athletes are coming into college with this mentality and they're not playing defense and it's too hard to coach them. Now keep in mind, he just got through having to chew these guys out and reinforce defense. So he's basically yelling, and Bobby Knight's saying nobody wants to play defense anymore. This is terrible. And this story is significant to me because this is when Eddie Sutton always said he wanted to educate the fans. This was a good example of that because he said, when they were sitting there discussing, what do we do about this? Eddie said, we got to educate the fans. We got to make them understand that good defense is a part of winning and it's important, and we can't just all be about offense. So I enjoyed listening to that. It helped me understand why he was always talking about educating the fans. But it was also fun to listen to him and Bobby Knight go back and forth because they were both really mad about what they felt like was a change in the game where we got to score 80 points and it's all about offense and it's about being on TV and defense is boring and all this stuff. It was really fun listening to that.
Yeah, you had some good questions this week. You know, I am disappointed, though, no questions from Said 76.
Maybe he took a break this week.
Maybe, I was going to say, this might be the first week that we haven't had something from Said. So, Said, hope to hear from you again next week. If you have a question for Mike and our Ask Mike segment, just head on over to Honkville, go to the Ask Mike forum, and ask away. No question is off limits, right, Mike?
That's right.
Right.
We will answer, and we will even take questions from people that are mad at Musselman.
Exactly. We will. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next week, guys.